I'm here with Anthony Bowens. If he's a name that you don't know, you're going to know. Anthony, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. We're going to jump right into it. How did you get into pro wrestling, and at what point were you interested in pro wrestling?
My first memory would be probably in 1997 when the Sting Hogan vignettes came out for Starrcade. I remember seeing the one where Sting was like in the warehouse and it was raining or something like that. And I was like, oh, this dude's cool. And my dad didn't end up buying the pay-per-view, but I ended up seeing it on VHS. But that was like my first memory of like wrestling was awesome.
Now, the story that's out there is that you had met Santino Marella and encountered some people from the WWE roster when you were doing some weight training, and maybe that's how you got the connections to get into pro wrestling. Maybe walk us through that, if that's true, or how it actually happened, how you got into the wrestling business.
So basically, I had played baseball for 11 years and all through college, and that chapter of my life ended, and I was trying to find what was the next, I guess, activity to fill that void. And I wanted to give professional wrestling a try. I just really didn't know how. So I looked into going to Lance Storm's school. I looked into going down to, I think FCW was having like random tryouts that I thought I'd be able to go to. So I was like, oh, I'll go down there and do that. But that wasn't really feasible. And one particular morning, I emailed all my professors and I called in sick, or excuse me, I called in sick from class, and I went down to my local gym, which is where most of the roster lives when they're in the area, and I just went around and just started taking pictures with everybody. And the last person that I saw was Santino Marella, and I actually wasn't going to bother him, but thank God I did. I waited for him to be in between sets. I respectfully went up to him and was like, hey, you mind taking a picture with me? And he stayed in gimmick, which is funny to think of. He took the picture, and as I was walking away, he said, hey, you look like a professional wrestler. Have you ever thought about becoming one? And I was like, yeah. And he pulled out his phone and gave me a number to Pat Buck, who's the current owner and head trainer at Creative Pro Wrestling. And then 1 week later, I was training to be a wrestler.
Did you ever end up training alongside Santino? I know he's got a school as well.
No, I've never trained with him, but we did do a spot together, I think 2 years ago, which was very cool, kind of like a life coming full circle moment.
So did he remember you when you did that spot, or had you kept in touch with him or anything like that over the years?
He did, because we're friends on Facebook, so I think we really don't talk, but I'm pretty sure he sees like updates and stuff, so he did remember the moment.
So Pat Buck has his hands in a lot of things, from promoting to podcasting. He wrestles himself, of course. So, I mean, can you tell me about maybe his influence and your experience at the school?
I think Pat is bar none one of the best trainers in the country. A lot of all of his knowledge basically has been instilled in our students, and you could tell by the quality product that WrestlePro has and Creative Pro Wrestling has. He trained guys like MJF, guys like myself. I think he's one of the best out there.
He also has the experience of being an OVW for quite a while. He knows especially the type of things that WWE looks for. In particular, he has connections a little bit of everywhere. Who else early on helped you out that maybe took you aside and said, oh, you're doing this right, you're doing this wrong?
I have a lot of influences. One of the biggest I'd probably say is Dan Moff. He was a guy who had full confidence in me when I didn't have it in myself. He was a guy who instilled aggression into me. I remember one of my, I guess, first couple matches, I asked him, like, hey, can you check out my match? And he's like, yeah, I'll be watching. And we specifically had worked on striking and stuff before that. So I wanted to make sure I impressed him. And then once I came back through the curtain, he goes, you did everything well, but I was like really disappointed in your strikes. It just there wasn't any aggression. There was nothing behind it. And it just I felt like I was like disappointing my father. So from like then on, I made sure to make everything look like it was devastating. So I think Moff has played a big role in my career. Other people have helped, like Mario Boccara, Kevin Matthews, Kurt Hawkins, Heavenly Bodies, riding with them up and down the road. So I think there's a lot of people who have had a helping hand in my career.
I know early on you had used the name Anthony Vigilante. What went into that, and maybe the decision to go back to using your real name?
So my dad's last name is Vigilante. So
Okay.
my dad is one of my biggest supporters. I thought it'd be cool to kind of honor him in the beginning and be Anthony Vigilante, but it just wasn't really working out too well. So I thought just using my real name would be the best option.
That's a pretty badass last name to have.
Yeah, Santolo Vigilante.
Man, that's
Nice.
that's one that you would assume is a gimmick name. That's pretty awesome. So early on, you're working. How far after you started training did you have your first match? And maybe walk me through how you found out you were going to have your first match and the experience of that.
So I guess your battle royal would be considered your first match. So I
Sure.
think that was about a month and a half into training. Pat came up to me and said, "Hey, do you have gear?" And I was like, no." And he was like, "Get some gear in the battle royal." I was like, "Oh, cool! My first match, a month and a half in. This is pretty dope." And I woke up that morning, and the feeling I had in my stomach, I honestly didn't think I'd be able to do it. I was so nervous, like to the point where it was almost debilitating. And I had that feeling throughout the entire day. And then the second I went through the curtain, it disappeared. And that's kind of how I knew I was going to be able to get through this and do this for a long time. I just felt comfortable.
So after that, because I mean that happens a lot. I mean, you see a lot of guys that are young in the business that will a lot of times, especially with wrestling schools like that, they'll get put in the battle royal. It's a good way to get them experience. It's a good way to fill up the ring. It's a good way to put a spot on the card. After that, like say your first singles match, what kind of feelings and emotions were going through your mind, through your head at that point, and how did you feel afterwards?
My first singles match was actually in my hometown in Nutley for a company which I don't particularly want to name.
Yeah.
But it was in my hometown of Nutley, and I was wrestling in front of friends and family, and it was very cool. I wasn't really nervous because at that point, I think it was maybe 4 or 5 months in, I kind of gotten the hang of at least having a match called to me in the ring. I wasn't capable at the time of like calling my own, but as long as I had a good heel in there who was able to call stuff to me, um, I followed very easily, so I was very comfortable.
So, as anybody who has followed you on social media knows, you've had some pretty high-profile opponents. As we're filming this, actually, Title Match Wrestling released your match with Drew McIntyre from a while back before he signed. Who was the first person that you faced, and you were thinking to yourself, "Holy shit, this is somebody that is well known. It's maybe starstruck you, or even if not starstruck, you were just like, okay, this is how I'm gonna see where I'm at."
I don't particularly get starstruck, but I honestly think it probably would be that McIntyre match, only because that was about a month after I had that NXT incident with the Authors of Pain. And that was going to be my first match back in the main event, and I hadn't been in the ring, obviously, because I couldn't bump. Um, so I was very worried about my wind. I was very worried about being up to par with him, and I think that was the first time I'd been a bit nervous in a long time. That was what, 2006, end of 2016 or beginning of 2017?
Yeah, I know that the NXT thing was at the end of November of 16.
Yes. Okay, so I'm in the right time frame. Yeah, so that was January of 2017.
So let's go ahead and talk about this Authors of Pain thing. How did you get the call to come to NXT? How did that relationship develop?
Well, for that, I actually just reached out and asked if there's any opportunities available. I've had a good relationship with WWE over the years. I first did like extra work back in 2014 and impressed a bunch of the scouts there, I guess specifically William Regal. And then they offered me the tryout, the Arnold Classic in 2015, and then I ended up doing well enough there that they invited me down to the Performance Center at the end of that year, which went well. Obviously, I wasn't signed, but it was enough to keep me on their radar and stay in touch with them. So I was comfortable enough to kind of reach out and say, "Hey, are there any opportunities available?" And they said, "Yeah," and they brought me down.
So this match happens. It's during the Authors of Pain's real big push. They're trying to establish these guys as big, violent, badass dudes. And I remember straight out of the gate, there was a spot where you were up in the corner and you took this just filthy bump off the corner. How do you react to that? that go the way that you had planned it? And that wasn't even the bump. That wasn't even the bump that people talk about or the spot that people talk about. But I noticed that one as especially impressive.
It's funny because I thought it would be cool if they did that and I did like a flip bump and landed on my stomach, but I got hit so hard I didn't even have time to even do the rotation, so I just crashed down hard. It wasn't too bad. None of the bumps were too bad, obviously, except for the last one. And a lot of people gave them heat for that, but I don't particularly think it was their fault. I watched that clip over and over again I guess after it happened. And what I think was the scenario is when a wrestler's first instinct when they're falling backwards and bumping is to smack their arms out to break the fall. Sure. His head and everything came down right where it was supposed to. I think it was more of a natural reaction for him to kind of extend his arms to break his fall. And as that happened, his elbow caught me in the head. So it wasn't them just being reckless and him getting powerbombed onto my face like people were claiming it was.
Do you remember what happened following that? Like, how out of it were you? What explain to me how things happened after that.
I remember the power bomb. I remember Johnny coming down, and then it was just lights out, like complete pitch black. And then I woke up in the middle of their finish, and Eddie, who was reffing, said, he was like, "Bowens, are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "No, you're not. We're ending this." And then I kind of, from what I remember, blacked out during that promo, and then I came to with the doctors in the ring, and they helped me out. Doctors checked me out afterwards, and I was kind of foggy for maybe about a good 30 minutes, and then after that, I felt okay, because I was recalling conversations I had the prior year being down there with some of the doctors, and they kept me for testing the next day at the Performance Center. I just kind of hung around Orlando for a day or two, and then they cleared me to go home.
So what type of interaction did you have with Razor, Akam, your tag partner, WWE, in the days following that, or have you?
They were super cool the following day. They picked me up early. They did all the errands that I needed done, dropped off my rental car, went to the hotel and grabbed all my things, that kind of thing. So they're very respectful and I guess I'm not going to use the word remorseful. Apologetic is a better word. They're very apologetic about what happened. I could tell they felt bad, and they were super cool the next day.
Do you, when you say that, do you mean WWE or Akam and Razor in particular?
Akam and Razor.
So I mean, you're a big dude, and they, like, when you look at the size of you next to them, it was still insane. Are you even surprised that you got that spot? Usually they reserve that spot for guys that are probably a good 20, 30 pounds smaller than you.
I think William Regal enjoys my work, and I think he was trying to give me an opportunity just to get in front of the camera and get in front of Hunter. So I'm pretty sure he made the call to insert me into that match, from what I understand.
And have you spoken with WWE since then, since this incident, and what type of relationship do you maintain with them?
We still have a good relationship. I keep in contact with them just to see if there's any opportunities going forward. I'm hoping that one day I'll be able to get there and be under contract and be a part of the roster, but that remains to be seen. Right now, I'm not really worried about that. I'm just concentrating on, I guess, continuing the momentum that I have both in and outside the ring.
So you had mentioned the tryout at the Arnold Classic, and I had posted some pictures on Twitter a while back, and you had said, "Hey, I was there." And I remember that week was a crazy week. I went up there to cover that show, and obviously when you get the call that you're going to be a part of this, Bill DeMott is the trainer.
Yes.
By the time you're there, Bill DeMott is not the trainer. In fact, it's Matt Bloom, and he's thrust right into this situation. Just a few days prior, DeMott was canned. Explain to me how you find this out, how you got the tryout, and just how this whirlwind happened.
Well, actually getting the tryout is a pretty crazy story. It's kind of long if we have the time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so I was booked for my first, I guess, loop as an extra in 2014. I'll try and condense everything, by the way.
Hey, it's fine. Take your time.
So I had Pat had let us know that 4 of us were going to be doing like extra work, and it was super cool for all of us. Because anytime you do it that first time, it's like, wow, like you get to work for WWE. It's really cool. I was the only one for some reason that did the 4-day loop with the house shows as opposed to just Raw and SmackDown. So I ended up doing the first house show in Trenton, which was fine, as a Rosebud, and then the following day in Allentown's where things got pretty crazy. So you get this email that gives you like a list of instructions and like rules, like don't show up more than 20 minutes early to call time, don't go near the ring unless asked, all this kind of stuff. And I got to Allentown like an hour early. Now I didn't know it really doesn't matter what time you get there, but for me, since it was my first time, I was freaking out. So I got there and thought I was going to get heat for being there early, and ran to the locker room and just hidden there. And it got to the point where I needed to go use the restroom. So I kind of snuck out to go use it, and then I ran into Titus O'Neil, who I had spoken to the night before, and he was like, "Hey, do you want to go work out in the ring?" And then a little thought bubble popped up in my head and was like, I just remembered the rules, like don't go near the ring. So I was like, should I say no? Like, yeah, I'll say yes. So I said yes, and I got changed. I went down to the ring. We were just chatting, and then Arn Anderson came walking down, and he was like, "Hey, son, have you had a WWE physical?" And I was like, "No." He goes, "Get out." So
Wow.
I had to get out of the ring, and he said, "Well, just go find one of the doctors and just have him take a look at you because, for legal reasons, we can't have you in the ring." The doctors don't get there until like 5 or 6, so I was running around the building trying to find nobody, basically. So with all hope lost, I kind of went back down to the ring to just kind of learn, because Arn was in there kind of showing people different moves, and it was almost like a seminar for the roster. And out of nowhere, he leaves the ring and then shows back up 5 minutes later, and he was like, "Hey, have you had a physical at all in the last couple of months?" I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "All right, we'll get back in the ring." So I got back in the ring, started asking me a bunch of questions, and then he just yelled out, "Everybody clear the ring. Titus, you're going to have a match with Anthony right now for 5 minutes." So I'm like, what? Because it's kind of unheard of, really, to be doing, tryout matches
Sure.
at shows before the actual show in front of the boys. So we worked a 5-minute match. It went well. I ended up busting my lip, so he stopped the match, and then he said, "Hey, Titus is 6'5" or whatever he is. Can you drop kick him?" I was like, "Sure, why the hell not?" We ran a quick spot. I drop kicked him flush in the face twice, and then he goes, "Up, that's all I needed to see." And then Scott Armstrong came over and he was like, "You did great for the amount of time you've been doing this, because I was only like a year and a half in or so. You deserve a tryout, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, wow, this is crazy. And then the following night, at Raw at Barclays, coincidentally, again, I was going to the bathroom. And then a attendant came over. He goes, "Hey, Anthony, Arn's looking for you." So he said, "Okay, sure." And he brought me to ringside, and Arn was sitting there, and he goes, "Hey, I'm just checking in with you. I just want to introduce you to some of my friends." So I'm like, "Cool." We walk around the other side of the ring. Goes, "Anthony, this is Road Dogg, Michael Hayes, and Triple H." And I'm like, is Arn Anderson introducing me to the owner, like basically the owner of the company right now, and all the agents? Like, what is happening? We had a brief conversation there, and then the following night at SmackDown, I worked a match before the show. Not a dark match, but just like they usually have the extras do matches early on in the day. And I impressed William Regal, and he said, "You did well. Work on your promo stuff, and we'll be in touch." And then a couple months later, I got the email to go to the Arnold.
So that Arnold tryout was an interesting one. You were on display in front of everybody, and I remember specifically, oh God, it was kind of embarrassing. There was a guy there who thought that public tryouts meant open tryouts.
Yes, I remember that.
So that it was a guy who was, I'll put it kindly, not in ring condition, in a cowboy hat and a trench coat, screaming at Matt Bloom to get his tryout.
If I remember correctly, security had to escort him out, right?
They did. Yeah. I wish I still had the photos from that, but yeah, they had to escort the fella out. So you're there. Did that add any pressure with all these people? Because I mean, unless people have been to the Arnold Sports Festival, they do not understand how big it is. It is enormous.
Yes.
I mean, hundreds of thousands of people over the weekend come there.
I don't particularly. I was very confident going into that because I worked out pretty hard to stay in shape for it. Having people around me, I think, made it more fun because I like being in front of an audience. Um, excuse me. I was nervous going in though because I had heard all the rumors of how Demont was as far as his training, so I was expecting to get demolished. But when I landed, I found out they had fired him, and then Coach Bloom had taken over. Um, and he's a great coach, and he worked us hard, and I had a lot of fun. It was very challenging.
So after that, what type of feedback did you get from WWE?
They said I did well, and we'd be in touch. And then a couple months later, I got an email that said they'd like to bring me down to the Performance Center, and then I went down there for 3 days.
And maybe walk me through that experience.
Probably the hardest 3 days of my life because it was just straight conditioning. They always put up the videos, so you see the kind of drills that people or we went through. It was rough. It was very challenging. I think I did very well physically. The only part, and I say that if I had nailed the promo, I think I would have been there already, but I bombed. I'll just be completely honest. um, I cut a promo on, I guess I have scars on my legs because I had a skin condition when I was little called hairy nevi, which is basically oversized birthmarks that could turn cancerous, and I had to have them removed. So I just kind of talked about my story with that, and then Coach Regal asked me to do a more wrestling type promo, and at the time I was still very um, I guess, timid as a performer, still trying to find myself, trying to find a character, trying to find myself as a person in life. So I really didn't have much confidence in myself as far as talking or anything in that aspect, and it just kind of threw me off guard. And I cut this really, really bad promo. I think I made fun of Coach Bloom's voice or something, just really cringy. And I'm pretty sure they have it on video, and I hope they never sees the light of day. But other than that, they gave me the feedback of, you have 4 of the 5 things that we're looking for to make a WWE superstar. It seems like your personality is kind of, not there yet. And once I got that feedback, and once I heard also that they said, we're not pro wrestling anymore, we're entertainment, that kind of set off a light bulb. And then I went out and started doing a ton of other things that to make myself like an all-around complete sports entertainer.
You've been in several commercials, actually. I mean, you've taken that quite literally. Maybe explain what kind of commercials you've been a part of, how you got into that world.
Yeah, so after that advice, I was like, what do I need to do to make myself better at this and become a complete performer? So obviously, I had to bring out my personality and I had to work on my talking. So I started to take acting classes. I started to do improv classes. I did improv shows. I did a live sketch comedy show. And then I started to dive into more casting stuff. So I've been in 5 national and international commercials with Lunchables, Domino's Pizza, Optimum Online, the NFL, WWE. I did the Tough Enough commercials. It all just built from there.
Which one did you look at and say? I mean, I know that commercials are limited experience in that regard, but which one has been your best experience thus far?
I would probably say probably the Lunchables was the biggest as far as production because that was a union project and we flew out to Chicago, and it took only a day to shoot, but it was the first time where the focus was mainly on me in the commercial. I was the lead role there. And the Tough Enough one was cool too because we shot that at that secret warehouse where they have all the gimmicks from the past and the stage and stuff. So we got to have a cool little tour of the building and see all those pieces and shoot in the studio there.
So you're still working the independent circuit, grinding away. What type of struggles maybe have you faced as you wrestled primarily in the Northeast? I know, but not just there. Maybe tell me how that experience is.
Currently or throughout the years?
Just throughout the years or leading into today.
Well, I've worked for most top independents in the East Coast. I've wrestled in England and Canada, so I've gotten around a bit, but I feel like I could be and should be doing a lot more, which is actually where my current character, the Wrestling's 5 to a Player, Anthony Bowens, came from. It's honestly, it should be a heelish character, but considering all of the LGBT advocacy that I've been doing, I wanted to keep it more babyface. But that character arose from the fact that I feel like I do way more than a lot of independent wrestlers do as far as I guess everything I do in and out of the ring. Like I feel like I'm the perfect person for a company like a WWE, like an Impact Wrestling, like a Ring of Honor, because I do it all. If you need me to go out and have a main event match with somebody like a Drew McIntyre and go 20, 25 minutes, I can do that for you. If you need me to go out and do print, I can do that. I've been on the cover of 2 magazines. Need me to go out and do commercials, represent the company, I've done that. Need me to go out and do media, I've been doing media for the last 3 years. I'm kind of self-trained in that area. If you need me to go host something, my boyfriend and I have hosted shows. If you need me to do social media, my boyfriend and I have a successful YouTube channel that's growing every day with, I think we're at 72,000 subscribers. Should be at 100,000 in a couple months. I literally can do anything, and I feel like I haven't gotten my just due in that sense. So I feel the 5 to a Player Anthony Bowen should not only just be in the East Coast, he should be in the Midwest. He should be on the West Coast. But those opportunities haven't really come. So that's where this character came from, and where the kind of motto, the 5 tools, 1 rule, prove them wrong. It's proving everybody wrong that Anthony Bowen should be all over the place, that Anthony Bowen should be a wrestling superstar.
You mentioned your YouTube channel. How important has that been in helping you out in front of a camera, like just speaking and acting and things of that nature?
Incredibly helpful. I think that other than the acting classes, I think the YouTube channel has been one of the biggest factors in helping me become more comfortable just speaking in general. If you even saw, I wish we had like behind the scenes footage, but when we first started doing it, the first maybe 10 or 15 videos or so took forever to do because the both of us just found it very awkward sitting there in front of a camera and talking to nobody. Now we just do everything in one take and we're done in like 30 minutes, depending on what the video content is. But it just puts you at ease in being in front of a camera and helps with improv and just being able to go and do things in very limited takes.
You, like I mentioned, you worked the independent circuit. You've also had some experience with Impact Wrestling. I know that they have a good relationship with Pat Buck.
Correct.
How has that been for you?
Very fun. They've given me. I just main evented with one of their one and only pay-per-views with Eli Drake, which is a very cool experience. I actually expected going into that match just to have like a 7 or 8 minute match and be one and done, and then I found out I was in the main event and we're going like 20. I was like, whoa! I would have came a little bit more prepared. But I guess Impact and I have a good relationship too. I worked for them last summer on one of their house show loops when they were doing like the minor league stadium tours.
So have you had any conversations with the likes of Impact Wrestling and AEW, Ring of Honor, WWE about possibly having a more permanent situation with them?
Nothing with Impact or AWE. Again, WWE and I keep in contact, so I'm not sure what the future holds. Obviously, I'd be happy with any one of those 3. But we'll see.
So as you're working the independent circuit, what do you do as a full-time job?
Wrestling, acting, YouTube. I worked at Major League Baseball for 3 years, which didn't end up working out with everything else that I did. One of the bosses and I just did not get along at one point. So I had to let that go. So right now...
So your career is immersed in wrestling, entertainment, acting, sports,
yes.
And all that. I mean, that your life surrounds that. Is there ever any burnout associated with that? Or are you ever like, man, is there ever any doubt, ever any reassurance? Like, man, I am getting this done. Maybe talk me through the ups and downs of that type of lifestyle.
It's very fulfilling and rewarding to be doing stuff where you're creative and kind of doing what you want to do. The scary part of it is it basically is up and down. Like, I was just on the cover of Gay Times, but who knows if I'll get another opportunity in the next coming months. I did a couple commercials, but there may not be castings that fit my profile. So everything is very up in the air. So that's the scary part, I guess, from a financial point of view. So I would love at some point to have a little bit more stability in one of those genres of entertainment so I can be a little bit more at ease. But I think that's all part of the process. I guess kind of paying your dues, and I feel like eventually it'll all work out because I always figure out a way.
You had an interview with People TV last year where you came out as gay. Have you faced any positive reinforcement, any negative reinforcement from that? I know obviously in any type of landscape you're going to have idiots out there, but maybe explain some of the positive and negative that you've experienced since coming out.
The positive is I've been able to be a role model for a lot of people who are struggling with themselves, whether that be sexually or their identity in general, who they are as a person. Like, my mantra is, yes, to help the LGBT community, but I'm also about to help people, maybe like the shy kid who wants to be more social, just anything to help people feel comfortable with themselves. So having the platform that I've had for the last couple of years, I've been able to help a lot of people. I get a lot of cool messages from people all over the world thanking me for doing what I'm doing, which reinforces the fact that it was a good decision to come out. The negative being, I guess, really it's only online. It's a ridiculous stat, but like 100% of all negativity has legitimately just come from either YouTube or Twitter comments. Never once have I experienced anything in person thrown at me, whether physically or I guess mentally or verbally, excuse me. So a lot of it's just internet hate, which I'm fine with because I understand it's going to happen. There's internet trolls. There's people who going through their own issues and they like to project that onto other people because it's easy because you're sitting behind a screen. So I really don't read too much into that, but that's mostly where all the negativity comes from.
And how does your boyfriend Michael handle your type of career, your lifestyle? You got to travel a lot, you got to train a lot. Obviously, that takes up a lot of your time.
We both, like, he wants to be in the entertainment industry as well. He is I guess, an upstart actor. He's done some pretty cool things with the Travel Channel, like Mysteries at the Museum. So he understands that there's going to be times in his life where opportunities are going to come along where he's going to have to go travel and do some things, and the same thing's going to happen in my life. So we accept that, we understand that, and if that was an issue, that's would have been something we discussed, I guess, when we first started dating. But he's very, very, very supportive, and he's one of my biggest fans.
And you all have just an amazing reach on YouTube. You all do a lot of fun stuff on YouTube. I know a lot of these are popular concepts and stuff, but a lot of them are very original concepts. How do you all go about creating some of these concepts and maybe some of the behind the scenes that goes into creating these videos? Because you got a lot of great stuff.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It really depends. We do a lot of brainstorming. We'll sit down, have like a little business meeting. Sometimes his brother used to write and create short films, so sometimes we'll sit down with him and he'll throw ideas at us. I'm like, oh, that's really funny. Pretty much anything that pops us and we think would be funny, we'll just, as long as it's appropriate, we'll toss up on YouTube. And essentially, we just wanted to be different than other, I guess, LGBT couples on YouTube. We found that, not to drag them or anything, but we found like a lot of their content tends to be overly sexual, and we didn't want to go that route. We wanted to build our audience based upon our dynamic as a couple and our personalities in general. So we put a strong focus on trying to be as like real and authentic as possible, so people can connect with us that way, as opposed to, let me just go to this channel because there's two attractive dudes, kissing or something.
This method of YouTube, it's proven very successful. I mean, All In was largely sold on the back of a YouTube show. You had Zack Ryder getting chants when John Cena and The Rock were in the ring, largely because of his YouTube show. What type of platform has that developed from you for wrestling perspective? Do you see a lot of crossover there between wrestling fans who maybe find you via that show or become wrestling fans because of your channel?
Well, that's why I find that I think what I'm doing now sometimes, I guess from a selfish perspective, needs to be looked at because I'm bringing a lot of outside eyes who don't particularly watch wrestling or wasn't even aware of wrestling. I'm bringing them to the product. I don't particularly put a lot of wrestling material up there because we try to, since it is Michael and Anthony, the name of the channel, we're trying to keep it keep videos between Michael and I as opposed to just solo vlogs. But I like to incorporate it in from time to time. I have, I think, 2 up there where I call them show days, where I take them through my entire process of, selecting my gear and doing pre-tapes before shows, the match itself, and then the aftermath of it. We have a pretty good reach in the LGBT community and a lot of wrestling fans. So I really don't think there's many people out there outside of being the elite on the independent. Well, they're not really independent anymore, but just
Sammy Guevara, but now he's in AEW, so you can't really call him independent anymore either.
It's really the only other guy that I've seen out there that has that's been consistent with it.
So what advice would you have, not necessarily to up-and-coming wrestlers, but YouTubers who might find this interview and say, man, how can I do that? How can I develop interesting creative content? How can I develop that type of reach?
I think just being consistent. I think a lot of people give up on it very quickly when they don't see the results right away. YouTube is very analytic and algorithm driven, so you either can get very lucky and pick up on it, or you can put out a video that just absolutely hits home with everybody, and it's off to the races from there. But you won't get to that point if you don't put in the effort and put in the time. And it sucks for a while sometimes because, again, you don't get that instant gratification of, oh, I posted a video and here's 80,000 views. It's going to start off very, very slow, but you have to have patience with it.
So where does Anthony Bowens see himself in 5 years? If you end up in WWE, you might not have the benefit of that YouTube channel, as we've seen before. Like Jessamine Duke had to give up Twitch. We've had several people who signed and had to give up some of their digital properties like that. Where do you see yourself?
I definitely see myself with a wrestling company with a TV product. I really don't care which one it is. I just want to wrestle for the rest of my life, or as long as I can, as long as my body will allow it. I've tried once to try and kind of see what would happen if I got away with it, but that itch was so strong I came back very quickly. So I really don't care what company it is. I just want to be wrestling on a big platform and use that platform to help other people.
When you look at some of the signings that AEW made, they didn't make a big deal out of the fact that Sonny Kiss is gay or that Nyla Rose is transgender. What do you think of the way they went about that, and maybe some of their I don't even know if they were efforts for inclusion as much as these were just 2 really talented people. How did you take that? How did you look at it?
Well, first of all, them signing them in general is a very good step in the right direction. Sonny and I are friends, and I'm very proud of him. I actually just met Nyla the other day at Capitol Wrestling, and she's very cool. So I'm very, very happy for them. And honestly, I like it because it's one of those things where I think a lot of people ask me too, like, how do you feel about people attaching the label to your name? Like, it's not just professional wrestler Anthony Bowens, it's gay professional wrestler Anthony Bowens. In the beginning, that was something that kind of bothered me, but I think we're in this time period where visibility is so important, and just being able to have that platform and just being there to represent the community and just show that any athlete, no matter who you are, can perform and live their dream, I think is very important, as opposed to hammering people over the head at the fact that Sonny is an LGBT performer. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, of course, of course.
It's a very delicate thing when you're trying to make progress in society. People fear change, so hitting them over the head and trying to force it and push it may get them to resist. So it's a slow and gradual process. So I think the more you make it a big deal, but don't make it an extreme thing, and just kind of make it almost as if it's a normal thing, as opposed to this is the most extreme weird happening, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think anybody that's seen Sonny wrestle knows that he didn't get that job because he was gay. That he got that job because
He can go.
he can go and he's different. Like the way that he walks, the way that he bumps, the way that he sells, the way that he does things.
Absolutely.
It's different. It's unique. It's very him. And I think people who see your work will say the same thing. Like you do some incredible things in the ring, and for your size, you're how tall? What's your weight?
I'm 5'10", 225.
So I mean, you've got an incredible amount of agility, and you mix that with power. What goes into trying out some of these new things? Because I've seen some of these moves, and I'm like, well, there had to be some point where he's like, can I pull this one off? Well, let's see.
It's a little bit of that and a little bit of, I'll sit at my computer. I'm a night owl or night hawk. I'm up to like 3 or 4 a.m. every single night. I'm either researching something or watching documentaries, just trying to learn. And sometimes I'll just sit there and kind of think up some weird stuff that I've probably never seen before in the wrestling ring. And then I'll be like, well, if I can, wow, tongue twister. If I can conceivably, in my head, think I can pull it off, I'll go into training and I'll try it out. And sometimes it's successful, and other times it's like, nope, that is not happening. So it really just depends. And then if I'm really, really feeling froggy and confident in myself, I'll just go out there and just do it in the ring, which I don't do too often, but sometimes you just have to go. I think one specific example would be from a ladder match we had last year in June where, if you recall, like the Jeff Hardy, he stands on the top rope and he has the ladder there and he kind of leapfrogs off the top of it and does the legs. I wanted to do that into a famouser, and obviously I'd never done that before, and there's not really many ways of trying that. So I just said, screw it, let's do it, and it came out great.
Well, I've mentioned to you this is going to be a WrestleMania weekend story, so this interview will probably come out around then, at least the audio will. Tell people where they can follow you on social media, and maybe any final words you have for people who either follow you or don't know who you are yet.
Well, for those who follow me, thank you for supporting me. I hope I'm making you proud. And those who don't, welcome aboard. You can find Wrestling's 5-tool player Anthony Bowens on Instagram and Twitter at Bowens_official. And then you can find my boyfriend Michael and I's YouTube channel, and that is Michael and Anthony.
I highly recommend that channel. They are doing a lot of great creative stuff. Anthony, I can't wait to tell this story, and thank you so much for taking the time.
No, thank you for having me, Sean.